So it's getting to the point where I went to grab a 5-gallon bucket to wash off, but it wasn't enough. This is quite a bit of turnip greens that I am harvesting right now. The weather's changing, and so it's getting warmer. As I was harvesting, I did find a few caterpillars and also 2 squash bugs that I squashed, because if you guys know, squash bugs are one of the biggest things that I struggle with down here, especially trying to grow squash. Luckily, I've only seen them on some turnip greens, where they're probably coming up out of the soil and everything else. You can see them kind of crawling through the dirt and also on the plant. So I am glad to see them there and not on the squash. But if I'm already seeing them and it's not even April, we all know that eventually my squash are going to get attacked. Luckily, I started them early, and I already harvested my first squash today, which I may show later, but the truth is I started eating it while I was still in the garden. I have eaten some strawberries and squash, sampled some carrots. That's the one thing about growing an edible garden or landscape, is that you can enjoy it while you work. And it's really good, right? So here's just a good portion of the turnip greens, and you can see that there are no bottoms to the turnips. These are simply the greens that I've harvested. I didn't give them a chance to produce any kind of bulb. I'm just harvesting. Earlier in the year, I sort of let them produce smaller bulbs. I don't really like the big bulbs on my turnips because they get really bitter, especially as the temperature fluctuates or it gets really hot. You really have to keep them watered and everything else. I'm not into the spicy turnips, so the greens is where it's at for me, unless it's really cool weather and I have the entire fall to kind of grow the bulbs out. That wasn't what happened this year, for sure. So this is a lot of greens, and they're actually a lot more. And you can see I harvested all size. So these really large ones, we eat stem and all. And I'll wash them off and put them in a freezer bag. And then when they freeze, I will just crush them up into whatever I'm cooking, and it adds a lot of nutrition. And it's really easy to process. Now, yeah, they get kind of weird when you defrost them, kind of like canned spinach. But if you're crushing them up really small, it doesn't matter. And this is just a small part of what I have harvested. Now, when I just harvested my little colorful basket, that gives me almost 2-gallon bags of turnip greens. I can't imagine what this is going to give me. And I already have 8 bags in my freezer, not including all the stuff that we've eaten or fed to the geese so far. So this is a good amount of food, and there's still quite a bit down here to harvest. You can kind of see where I've just taken my knife and cut through some of these stems, and they will absolutely bulb. I'll leave these in here. They may produce more leaves, and that would be great, or they may not. And then I can come through and pull all of these out, feed them to the geese if they don't produce any more leaves, or I can just do whatever I want, really. But I'm going to leave these because I know that they'll probably produce more greenery and leaves. And if they don't, like I said, I'll just pull them out and feed them to the animals, or I can compost them. So there are a lot of different options there. Technically, you can leave them in the soil and let them break down, because they are under the blackberries, and the blackberry is actually the main crop here. The rest is just kind of bonus because I didn't want to waste space. But I don't want to do that because, I mean, it's wet and rainy here. It will attract slugs. And I want to show you guys that, yeah, we're still having like grass and things still come up in between these plants. That's okay. I mean, the turnips are going to shade them out. They're going to keep growing. So you do have to make sure that you pick the grass out. And look, see, here's actually a caterpillar right here. Boop. On the plant. I don't know where it went. It's somewhere down there. So we still have caterpillars and things in our thing, and people, I get some comments where people are like, oh, maybe you need more pest control if you have holes in your vegetables. Yeah, no. I don't mind a couple of holes in my vegetables versus putting things on my food that I know are going to risk making me sick. It's not worth it, especially when I'm growing in this abundance. And I really like to show off just how abundantly everything grows because you have options. If you know me, Joni Mitchell, I love her music, and no, I really feel that phrase of you don't know what you have until it's gone, you know, and I think your health is definitely one of those. So if we can start kind of producing our own food and doing it the way we want without having to sacrifice our health to do so, I think that that's really great, you know. And I also would rather have a couple of holes in my turnip greens, some discolored apples and other things than be knowingly making myself sick. You know, I'm not saying that there's only one right way to do things, because there's not, but I'm saying this works for me and I'm okay with that, you know. And if you want to grow this way, I just want to say, like, they're insects, they're animals, you know, it is what it is. Plants are part of an ecosystem. Things are alive and they're living. Plants are alive and living, you know. It really is the reality of the situation. But I'm not a big fan of caterpillars and things touching me. I find wildlife really cool, but you just kind of learn to work around things. I think you get a little bit more braver, the more that you work out in the garden and everything else. But I know I've shown videos of me harvesting this bed actually fairly recently, and here's kind of the area where I was harvesting. It's grown back a lot, and so much so that I didn't even care and just threw my stuff in there, like, whatever, you know. It's even reseeding itself. I've shown this lettuce from last year that we've been harvesting leaves off of, but just look how much it's grown just since we harvested, less than 2 weeks ago. And I didn't even harvest the full bed. So now I'm coming through. Some of these leaves were ridiculously huge. They were taller than our mustard greens. And so I came through, I cut a bunch of them down, and this is just one bed. So I've probably said this before. In fact, I know that I have. Just one half of this bed is 4 foot wide and 16 foot long. So it's 64 square foot total. So from the edge of this bed all the way down to here, just on this side that's growing turnips. The other side is growing mostly carrots. This side, that's 32 square feet. So this is what you can grow in 32 square feet. This is a lot of food, and this isn't everything, because look, this is my harvest. So this is a lot. So can you produce all of your food on less than an acre? Absolutely. You could probably do it on less than a half acre, but you're going to have to learn how to eat seasonally. You're going to have to learn how to cook what you're eating, how to preserve it. It's just the reality of it. And you might find the more that you eat certain things and find the ways that you like them, the more your taste buds kind of change. I know for a while I really like bread, okay, but I was eating a lot of bread and sugary things from the store, and I noticed that my taste was changing and I couldn't taste the sweetness. So I backed off of a lot of sweeteners and things of that nature. And then the other day I was eating some bread. We made like homemade sloppy joes, and the bread, my husband's like, what does that look on your face? And I was like, the bread is sweet, you know. I've been eating this specific type of bread for a couple of years now, and I never noticed that it had a sweetness because I couldn't taste it anymore, just because of what I was eating, you know. So food really does make all the difference. The way that you cook and sweeten things really does make a difference. So I encourage you to kind of experiment, because what may work one way may not another. So like, my husband hates brassicas. He hates the smell of cabbage, Brussels sprouts, all of that is really strong. But I found that crushing up turnip greens into food, he's okay with that. He can eat that when it's mixed into other things and it doesn't dominate the flavor of the food. And so, you know, I think experimentation when you're homesteading and you're learning how to cook everything yourself makes all of the difference. Also, growing in the right seasons. If I grew these turnip greens when it starts to get really hot in May, when we're topping 90, 100 degree weather, it's not going to be so lovely. They're going to be very bitter, just really strong. Honestly, sometimes I compare eating some of these bulbs when they're grown in hot weather, turnips, radishes, anything of that nature, almost to eating horseradish. It really adds a lot of spice to your food, especially when raw and grated on salad. So if you like that horseradishy flavor, but you're like me and you live in the deep south and you do not have a way to grow horseradish really well outdoors, I highly recommend maybe growing some bulbs like turnips, different types of radishes, all of those root crops during the warmer weather. Make sure you water it well so it doesn't crack, and you might be surprised. Look at these leaves. This is that beautiful, I believe it's the giant Japanese red mustard. If these are just a couple of leaves, can you imagine how much a full plant that's allowed to grow to maturation would taste? You can see where I've actually cut some of the leaves off over time. And I like to take these outer leaves, especially now that we're kind of in pest season, and just pinch them off or cut them off, but they're getting kind of thick to just pinch off. But look at that. And then you can leave the inner leaves, and I find that the outer leaves, the larger leaves, are the ones that tend to fall to pest pressure and damage first. And so I take those off, and it eliminates them, either A, getting too large and bitter and pests being attracted to it, or them, starting to rot just because they've been there for so long. It seems like the oldest greens are the ones that have, say, aphids on them and things like that, because they've been there, and so it provides a shelter and a safe haven for them to lay their, for different insects to lay their eggs, or aphids to kind of cluster up on them. But if you're coming out and you're harvesting regularly those larger leaves, then they're not sitting there for long. It gives everything else less time to kind of lay their eggs and develop or take over certain plants. So that's something that's actually worked really well for me. And then look at this. Sometimes I forget this lettuce is here because it's growing underneath this, and like a baby blackberry plant's working way down there. This whole lettuce. This is a curly leaf lettuce, and it's from last year. It reseeded itself, and these popped up. And I think the fact that they're shaded out by the blackberries, but also the turnip greens, is why they're able to continue producing. But I kind of want to harvest this, really, because it's starting to get warm outside, and I'm worried it'll get bitter. But if I harvest it now, it probably won't fare well until dinner time. So what I'm going to do, I think, is come back out when it's closer to dinner time, when I want to use this in a salad. And I'm just going to cut off the whole thing at the base, because for when it's getting warm outside. But also, we have a family of 6. It's going to take that entire head of lettuce to feed all of us, and some extras. I'll probably have to harvest some other lettuces, which reminds me, if I walk around here, so bear with me because the camera might go to a weird angle, me walking around to the other side of the garden. If I come through here, you can see, here we are. Here is another lettuce. This is a butterhead lettuce. It's really soft, tender leaves, and this is another one where I have to harvest it right before we eat it, and sometimes even washing it can damage it. So that's why sometimes I grow them for the outer leaves, and sometimes I actually have to wait until they kind of either form a head or have several leaves, because it takes a lot to feed us. But certain people, like my husband and son, they don't like their lettuce when it gets too hard, or even when it starts to get bitter, even the slightest bitterness. So what I like to do is have these where I can come out and pick some off and put it on a sandwich or hamburger or whatever they want to eat, and it really works out. I find that these, they don't really do well in salads because they're so tender, and even just pouring, say you pour ranch on it, it just kind of makes it soggy, but it is really good on other things. If you like egg salad, it may sound strange, but actually I like egg salad sandwiches. I also like to add lettuce and tomato to it, and if you're a meat eater, bacon, strangely enough, really good. So that's something I recommend. Just kind of taking time. I know I'm getting quiet, listening to like the ducks running around behind the fence in the backyard, and I can hear some of the birds and things chirping away while I'm working, and it's just beautiful. Look at these grape leaves. So we've had this grape planted for over 2 years now, and it was well over 2 years when we got it. I want to say it was like a 3 or 4 year plant. We paid extra to have those, but I'm not 100% sure. So I'm hoping now it's somewhere between 4 and 6 years old that we'll actually get fruit. It will actually bear fruit. It bears fruit on the first year growth, and so this is what this is. We let it grow last year and did not trim it back, so I'm hoping that it does. If not, it's still absolutely gorgeous, and grape leaves are edible. And these get really large, so stuffing grape leaves, so good. It's definitely another option. If it's not something you're into, that's fine, you know, but it does give you more options. You might be surprised what all is edible in your garden, you know, especially if over time the leaves are just going to become damaged or die off. Then why not? If you see the size that these leaves can get on older plants and just how much they take over, it's really incredible. So that's really something to think about and remember. I might do a separate video on this later, but I did want to show this while I'm out here. So all of these paths right here, I spent last night mulching, you know, because of my lupus and all the skin rashes and issues I've been having, just being fatigued in the sun lately. I garden a lot at night, and we have a couple of large floodlights, which I think within the next couple of days I'll actually turn them on and do a video at night so you can see what I see at night and just how much area it covers. But what I did is I went ahead last night and laid cardboard down, and I know that you're probably seeing some leaves in here. These are turnips and other things that I came through and harvested or cut out of my garden, and that's why you're kind of seeing them everywhere. It's just when I'm harvesting and moving around, things are falling in the walkway and everything else. Now look at this. Underneath all of this is cardboard, and I only have like 3 boxes left because under everything that I've put down is cardboard, whether it's a garden bed or this. Now I know that there's an argument cardboard is not the best possible thing to be laying down because of the glues and things in it, and I don't disagree, but it's just gonna go to a landfill and rot, you know. So why not just let it decompose here, where it will give things time to establish and also compress the grasses and things underneath it, allow those to break down and provide nutrients to the soil. Now this will not stay bare. I will plant flowers and things in it. I will even plant some vining plants, maybe some melons, probably small variety of melons that only trail out, say 6 feet or so, and let them trail out in this area. Plant flowers to give it some diversity, invite pollinators, but also make this not just a practical space, but a really beautiful and enjoyable space. My family will come out here. The swing set's out here. My daughter's actually out here playing right now in the dirt pile, and my boys were just on the swing set. It's all around where I'm working so that they can play while I work, and also it brings some joy, you know, getting to spend time together, adding beauty to both our play and work area. It makes it worthwhile. Not that having good food isn't worthwhile, it's a lot of work, and if you're sucking the joy out of what you're doing, it makes it hard to do, to be honest. So that's kind of why I do things the way that I do. And look, there are more baby squash in this bed. And you can kind of see just how closely and how well connected every bed is. It's all within a certain distance. You know, here's my lettuce bed, which I still haven't finished laying mulch down. I'm waiting for the lettuce to get a little bit bigger. look at that. And see this little watermelon popping up? Once these lettuce are ready to harvest in a couple of weeks, those watermelons will take over and kind of trail out. And of course we'll feed them with compost and everything else so they have room to grow. And then over here is the compost bin, which is also going to be a worm farm, and you can see all the area they'll have to kind of trail out and do their own thing. And then the idea is actually adding 2 more beds over here, and we could probably add 3. We just haven't yet. Time will come. It does take money, it does take effort to do things, so I don't want to just wear myself out physically, mentally, monetarily, any of that. You know, it's okay to take a rest. It's okay to take things slowly. It may seem like we're moving really, really fast, but you have to understand that these videos are made over a period of time. And, I mean, like this week, I literally slept for 2 days straight, you know. It's noon and my husband's in there resting. He's on vacation this week. We value rest. We work hard. We really do. But we also value rest because we know that that is so important. So I just want to encourage you that you don't have to get out here and do everything at one time, you know. You can take rest, you can take breaks, you can do one bed, what works for you. I truly despise this all or nothing homesteading, I guess, ideology. I don't know what you would call it, where people think you have to do everything yourself, and that's exhausting. You know, start where you can, do what you can. I know that I preach that all the time, but I truly mean it. Like, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. And why I'm on this, let me show off. We are finally getting our second squash of the season. I actually went ahead and pollinated this. I know that they would pollinate themselves. I'm just impatient and would rather ensure that it's done 100% than wait. Look at all that. These are 2 squash plants right next to each other. And if it doesn't pollinate itself, then you can actually, not only can you eat the flowers, you can pick the squash off and eat the entire baby squash. So that's pretty cool. Definitely can't beat that. I was getting ready to go inside and look what I found wandering in my garden. So this squash is about the size of my... It was actually a little longer. I ate part of it. Now you can let this grow a bit longer, but I didn't because it has a little bit of damage. It has a little cut on it and stuff. And it was outside during that really cold weather where it actually froze just a little bit. And so I didn't think it was going to grow as well as it should, but I cut into it and it was actually probably one of the juiciest squash I've ever had. It was really good. And I have this knife on me. This is what I've been using to cut the turnips and stuff. But look at this.
Some juicy squash.
It really is. Looks amazing.
Hey, look. My dad's better at making ice cream than a mom.
Yeah, he is. My husband made homemade blueberry ice cream, and it looks amazing. And I think he just took, what did he take? Blueberries, cream, milk, sugar, and did he use ice? I don't think he needed to use ice because blueberry is frozen. And
no,
he mixed it into the blender and froze it. It's such an easy way to do things. Alright guys, well I'm going to let you guys go, and I'm going to go back to
so I can drink smoothly, not eat it.
Harvesting. And now that I've harvested, I actually need to wash all of those turnip greens and we have freeze-dried blueberries, so wash all of the turnip greens and then get them into the freezer. So thank you guys for kind of joining us and hanging out with me, listening to me go on and on about my turnip greens. Yes, I am absolutely borderline obsessed with them because they produce a lot of food for both my family and my flock of birds.
This ice cream.
It looks like good ice cream.